Hello everybody, and welcome to our Wave of Light structure deck release week. This week we're going to be doing some videos where we just want to talk about some of the different ways you can build your deck if you've just gone past the base structure deck and you want to get a little bit more out of it. And we're going to be gradually increasing the difficulty level of the videos and what the decks can do over the week, and we thought we could just go over some fun stuff that you guys could try with this new structure deck. Welcome back everybody to our last video in this series of the Wave of Light structure deck release week. So today we're going to be looking at a very different build from what we've been considering for our previous two. We're going to be looking at playing the Herald side of the deck. Now, unlike our previous two decks, we're not filling our deck with counter traps with fairies that generate advantage from counter traps. We're going to be playing Herald and no counter traps in this deck. We're also going to be including a few cards from the upcoming expansion, Extreme Force, and we're going to have a pretty stacked out extra deck as well. So for our final deck, we're going to be looking at a completely different build with a card that I've completely ignored in these videos that does come in your Wave of Light structure deck. Eva. Eva, to me, is one of the most powerful cards included in the new structure deck. It has an effect that if it's sent to the graveyard in any way, once per turn you can banish two fairies in your graveyard to search your deck for two cards that are level 2 or lower that are also fairies. And primarily they fuel your negation rainbow. In this case, our Herald of orange, green and purple light. Thanks to the effects of Eva, it's quite easy to set it up so that you can not only negate your opponent's first card, you can then search your deck for two more and then negate the next action that your opponent does as well. It keeps the cards flowing and it puts you in a position where you can choose negation straight from your deck. As we've seen from some of our YCSs, the hand traps are some of the most powerful cards in the game right now, and this deck gets to play its own flavor of hand trap and has searches for specifics. So let's go through the deck list and we'll talk about what we can do with this. I personally think of the different builds of the Counter Fairy deck that I've enjoyed, this is the one that I feel most confident in. Well, for the main reason that you can shotgun choose to go second in every game, because all of your hand trap fairies, in your case your heralds, they can interact from your very first turn, even when from your opponent's first turn. So as we saw, we're definitely playing 3 copies of Eva. There's absolutely no reason not to. We're going to be playing 3 copies of Herald of the Orange Light because monster effects are the most popular to negate. It's also a tuner, so this opens up some options in your extra deck as well. We're going to be playing 3 copies of the Green Light. This is to deal with a lot of your opponent's removal and setup cards as well. You can always catch your opponent off guard when you negate a spell like Regeki that they were not expecting to get interrupted. We are playing 2 copies of Herald of the Purple Light. Now, this is actually a kind of a preference slot. You can choose on the basis that you do want to be going second more. You might want to relegate these to the side deck based on whether or not you get forced to go first. This can negate evenly matched in addition to any of your opponent's other trap cards, but it can also just act as a fairy that you can search from Eva that can be discarded to your other heralds should you need to. But negating your opponent's evenly matched is always very strong. The heart and soul of this deck is the Agent of Creation Venus. This card has an effect that's not once per turn that lets you pay 500 life points to search your deck for a copy of Mystical Shine Ball. Of course, you can then summon 3 of these and then use them as link materials to perform many link summons and set up some ridiculous combos. There's a new card in Extreme Force, which we'll get to a little bit later, that you can summon that's going to be the main go-to card for your initial setup. To back up the Agent of Venus, we are also playing 3 copies of Exodia, the Ultimate Forbidden Lord. This lets you shuffle all monsters in your graveyard back into your deck, and then you get to special summon it. So then it acts as a link material, but also it puts the Mystic Shine Balls back into your deck, so that you can then pay 500 life points per Shine Ball to then just get new materials out of your deck. You can also end up in situations where the second time you've gone round, if you leave the Exodia in play, he can be sitting on 3000 attack just as a special summon, which is very strong. He also lets you get away with playing smaller numbers of cards in your extra deck, so you have a lot more room for variety and specific silver bullet answers because you just put them all back into your extra deck if you need to reuse them. To complement our Venus, we are going to be playing our Star Seraph engine. And that means 3 copies of Star Seraph Scepter and 3 copies of the Star Seraph Sovereignty. These cards let you not only add each other to your hand, so you can normal summon a Star Scepter to add the Sovereignty. You can set yourself up in situations where you normal summon the Sovereignty when you have, normal summon the Scepter, and then when you have Sovereignty in your hand, you get to special summon it, draw a card, search for the other one, and then you get to special summon, and then you've got enough for free material Xe or free link materials, depending on what the situation calls for. Then when you use Scepter as an Xe material, you get to clear out more cards and draw more cards. There's 2 very, very powerful Xe monsters we'll look at a little bit later that you can use these cards on. I have included 1 copy of the Power Angel Valkyria. It's because whenever a activation of a spell trap or monster effect is negated, so for your Heralds, you can then search your deck for a card which can give you, for example, Eva. It can give you the Agent of Venus if you've not drawn it. If you've already drawn 1 Sovereignty, you can grab yourself a Scepter, and then you can set yourself up for combos next turn. This is just a preference slot. You can feel free to remove this should you decide to. Also, you can consider things like Max C or some of your other powerful hand traps if you decide that you want to play some of the traditional things such as Ash Blossom, Joyous Spring. So next we're going to be looking at our spell cards. We're going to be playing Transmodify. This is very strong when played on the Agent of Venus after you've done some Mystic Shine Ball shenanigans, because you can then turn it into a Scepter. But you can also turn all of your Heralds into a Venus, which will then let you start off. And the first of the cards from Extreme Force I'm going to show you as well, which can work with this, is Downbeat. So we're going to bring that up on the screen for you now. So Downbeat is a new spell which acts as a reverse Transmodify. This lets you summon a monster from your deck that's the same attribute type but 1 level lower. So you can turn your Star Seraphs into Venus. This gives you a lot of consistency into getting into your Venus. So you can do things, for example, summoning the Scepter, using Downbeat on Scepter after you've made your search for Sovereignty. Summon Venus, and then after you've done your combo, you can then Transmodify up into another Scepter, which gets you another Sovereignty, and then you can then trigger the Sovereignty in your hand, and you can then start making even more plays. Another card that's been performing extremely well is Photon Veil. This card lets you shuffle 3 light monsters from your hand back into your deck, and then you get to add 1 to 3 level 4 or lower light monsters to your hand. But if you add 2 or more, they must be of the same card. So there's a couple of really cool things for this. The main reason that we're playing it here is it lets us, for example, shuffle back Mystic Shine Balls we may have drawn, and we can also then search for our copies of Venus to make sure that we get those off. You can also search out for Star Seraph Sovereignties if you have a Scepter spare that you want to use. But you can also do things like, for example, when you're ahead, add 3 copies of Herald of the Orange Light to your hand, and then you can just make sure your opponent is never getting into that game. You have a lot of flexibility, and it just gives you more ways to make sure you start with Venus. Your opponent's already going to be in a situation where they have to use a hand trap or a way to negate this. Ash Blossom's not good enough, so you're going to be worried about things like Ghost Ogre and Snow Rabbit or Max C. But you're playing hand traps that can negate other hand traps, so you're already in a position where your opponent doesn't know if what they've played will be enough to stop your combo going through. You can play this card, Tri-Rite, which lets you special summon 3 level 2 or lower normal monsters from your graveyard. So the cool thing about Tri-Rite is that you can get back your 3 Mystic Shine Balls after you've used them as link materials. This can conflict with Exodius, but you can play this as more of a complement to Exodius as well. One of the key reasons that I really like this card is that Tri-Rite and 3 Mystic Shine Balls make Trigate Wizard. As a 1-card Trigate Wizard, I think that's very strong. You can then carry on with the rest of the combos, depending on the number of Exodiuses that you've drawn. You can then get a full link, and then you've got negation, then you've got hand trap negation, and then you've got more ways of searching for negation, really stopping your opponent from getting into the game. As we're heavily playing link summons, we're definitely playing Soul Charge. The Soul Charge is absolutely absurd in this deck when you've got monsters with multiple link arrows. Essentially, Soul Charging something like a Fireball Dragon is the same as getting 4 monsters back, because a Fireball Dragon costs 4 materials, being able to bring that back is extremely powerful, and then being able to choose how to link it up so it gives you more cards can start getting pretty obnoxious, especially when you use Fireball's Dragon Return effect to put Evas back into your hand, which then fuel your Heralds, which then get you more Heralds. Last but not least, we're going to be playing 3 copies of Evenly Matched in our deck. As we are choosing to go second as often as possible, having Evenly Matched can just outright win a game for you all on its own. Worst case, if you do draw it later on and you don't need it, you can set it and destroy it with Star Seraph Scepter to draw a card, should your opponent not have any very viable options. You can also send them back to your deck with a link monster we're going to be looking at in just a second. And that link monster is Sayuja the Skuldred, which we'll bring up for you now because this card also appears in Extreme Force. This is the key link monster for this deck. It requires 4 materials and it gains effects based on the number of monsters that have different names that you link summon it with. So the main interaction in this deck that makes this card so powerful is Venus on its own gives you enough monsters to special summon it and draw 4 cards to send back 3 that you don't particularly want. So the way we do this is we would summon Venus, use the effect to get our Mystic Shine Balls, then we perform 2 link summons. In this case we get our Link Spider, and then we also get Umdug of the World Chalice. So you set it up so that your Spider and Dragon are friends as they mutually link. And then from there, you have 4 monsters with different names. You go ahead and link summon those up into Sayuja, and then you get to draw 4 cards and send 3 back. So the cards that you're going to be looking to keep can be variations on your Star Scepter combo, if you happen to draw those. You can keep Exodius's, should you get another way to get to Venus. You can keep a copy of Eva and any number of Heralds. It's actually very possible, if you've got an Exodius, to summon 2 Sayujas in 1 turn. And then you get, since it's not hard once per turn on that effect, you can then go through your deck very, very, very quickly when you're setting up your link fill. Other monsters we're playing is our 3 material Exceed monsters. We're playing Satellarknight the Eltros. This gives us more ways to remove our opponent's cards. It's harder for your opponent to respond to this, and then Scepter takes another card away from your opponent. It's very, very strong at dealing with resolved threats on your opponent's side of the field whilst drawing additional cards. And the other one we're playing is Evil Swarm or Boros, which has 3 very powerful effects. The main one being able to take cards out of your opponent's hand, but you can also mess with your opponent's graveyard. You can also send cards back to your opponent's hand as well. While you're doing this and drawing cards, you generally just end up with a lot of good stuff, and it's a very strong option to go with your Star Seraph lineup. We're also going to be playing ourselves Fireball Dragon because it's Fireball Dragon and it has cool interactions with our Heralds. We're going to be playing Trigate Wizard with things like Soul Charge, Tri-Rite Zone, Exodius and various Venus combos. It's very possible for you to link that up all the way. You can play any number of Proxy Dragons that you want to go with this to make sure that you get the full link. You can get away with things like Borreload Dragon, Alkeus Magician, and because you've got just so many link materials that you can make, you can pretty much choose whatever link monsters you want to enjoy in this deck. And when you ever use Exodius, you get to put all your materials back, so you don't even have to feel guilty if you use your Trigate Wizard and a monster to summon a Fireball Dragon, because you have the option of putting the Fireball Dragon back into your extra deck that you can then use later. And also with Sayuja, when you're drawing so many cards so quickly, you are going to be seeing a lot of these cards that give you very, very strong fills very quickly. The last card I've got here is Decode Talker for the sake of having Decode Talker. I really like this deck in the sense that it's in a different position to what our previous 2 decks were, which were decks that pretty much have to go first or they end up in a very weak position. This is a deck that excels going second. But if your opponent does make you go first, you can just go ahead and go straight for a Sayuja combo using Downbeat or Transmodify to get over to your Venus. If your opponent does happen to have Cyphering Gamma or Maxi or Ghost Ogre, there's every option that you have Herald of the Orange Light if you happen to draw it, and then that will get you additional cards to negate your opponent's next play. And being able to interact with your opponent's hand traps whilst also searching for cards that are just generally good at disrupting your opponent's other key cards, I think puts this deck in a very strong place. There are some times where you'll end up drawing too many Heralds and then not actually drawing an Eva or anything else, but with both Downbeat and Transmodify, you have the options of getting the Venus, summoning Sayuja, and fixing your hand, because you can always send back cards you don't want or use things such as Photon Veil. Was it Photon Veil? Yes, I believe it was. To add specific cards to your hand that you require. Would it be Venus? Would it be Heralds? The choice is up to you. So that's our last deck for this. So to just show you one more cute thing you can consider for this deck, a very powerful fairy monster that is level 1 and light is Time Maiden. And Time Maiden lets you play the Time Lords straight from your deck or add them to your hand. So you get to start enjoying cool things such as Meteion, Lazion, Sapphion. You can get away with playing these since Eva can go ahead and search for your Time Maiden in the middle of the negation. You can then throw out the Time Maiden when you negate your opponent's spell card, and then you can banish this from the graveyard to start doing things. Additionally, with Sayuja, with its effective special summon a card from your hand, you can summon these Time Lords from your hand and do stuff with them there. So it's an extra thing. Other variants you can do to consider with this deck is you can consider going Archlord Christia to stop players from special summoning. You can summon it through Sayuja from your hand, and then it gains 300 attack if you summon it to a Link Arrow. Having a 3100 attack monster that says your opponent can't play hand traps when you can negate your opponent's monster effects and spells is pretty obnoxious. So there's lots of different ways you can go with this again, but the core that you're going to be playing is many Evas, many Heralds, and then you go from there. I think this deck has some clout. I think that some of you guys on the tournament circuit can probably figure this out. And it actually, I think playing this kind of deck can also result in you becoming a stronger player, even if you don't actually sign up to a tournament with this. It's because you get used to choosing which negation windows are key to each of the decks. The more you play this version of the deck or some of the other versions of the deck, you get used to trying to figure out where the stopping points are for opponents' decks. And once you get used to that, you can figure out then when you're playing those decks where your opponent's going to try and interact, or you can find the key weak points of their deck and what it signals is in your opponent's hand. This last card, in case you wondered, is Watapon. It's also a level 1 fairy. It can be searched for from Eva, and when you do so you can special summon it, which then gives you a link material. You can also, if it's drawn off of Sayuja, you get to special summon it, and then it can give you that last link material should you be going for a Tri-Gate Wizard play and you want to fully link it. So it actually has some use here, and he looks adorable. But that's some options on how to play the new cards from Wave of Light. We hope you've enjoyed this series. If you've got any other advice you'd like to give to players, throw it down in the comments. If you found some cool cool tech that we haven't included here, please go ahead. Thank you so much for watching today, guys. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you'd like to give us any feedback, please leave your comments below. We're always looking for feedback on these types of videos so we can improve the content we deliver to you guys. We hope to see you on our channel in the near future. Have a great day.